A rejected police dog did the unthinkable at the Shenzhen port. Zeus, a 7-year-old German shepherd, was known for his calm precision. But today, something was off. He kept returning to one container, a mystery no one could explain. A strange odor, Zeus's frantic behavior, and a discovery that left the team speechless. Something was hidden inside. Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. The morning sun had barely risen over the bustling port of Shenzhen when Zeus, a 7-year-old German shepherd with the customs department, began his routine inspection. His dark fur gleamed in the early light, still damp from the morning mist that clung to the port's massive containers. His handler, Officer David Chen, watched with quiet pride as Zeus moved with the precision that had made him legendary among the port's security teams. David remembered the day he'd first met Zeus, 5 years earlier at the police dog training academy. Unlike the other shepherds who were all eagerness and energy, Zeus had stood quietly observing, his intelligent eyes taking in everything around him. The trainer had called him different, and some had worried he lacked the necessary drive. But David had seen something special in those watchful eyes, a depth of understanding that went beyond mere training. He thinks too much, the head trainer had warned David. Most handlers want a dog that simply follows commands. David had smiled, already feeling a connection with the thoughtful shepherd. Then he's perfect for me, he'd replied, because I think too much too. Their early morning walks through the port had become a ritual, a quiet time before the day's chaos began. David would talk softly to Zeus about everything, his worries about the increasing wildlife trafficking reports, his pride in their work together, even his concerns about his aging mother at home. Zeus would listen with those same intelligent eyes, occasionally pressing his nose into David's hand as if to say, "I understand." On this particular morning, something about Zeus's behavior was different. The usual methodical inspection had transformed into something more urgent. David noticed the change immediately. The slight stiffening of Zeus's tail, the more pronounced arch of his neck, the way his nose worked overtime as he circled a shipping container. "He's never this agitated," David observed, speaking into his radio to alert his supervisor. In 5 years of partnership, he'd learned to trust Zeus's instincts implicitly. They'd had their share of successful busts together, illegal drugs, smuggled goods, even a human trafficking attempt. But this was different. The dog's usual calm precision had been replaced by an almost frantic energy. "What is it, boy?" David whispered, moving closer to his partner. Zeus looked up at him with an urgency that made David's heart race. The shepherd's nose kept returning to a specific spot on the container, his paws scratching lightly at the metal surface. The container's manifest listed its contents as dried herbs and traditional medicines. But David had seen too many false manifests to take anything at face value. The morning port workers had started to take notice, some pausing in their duties to watch. They all knew Zeus. He was something of a local celebrity, having been featured in the regional news several times for his exceptional detection work. When Zeus acted like this, something was always wrong. David radioed for backup while maintaining his position, one hand resting reassuringly on Zeus's back. The shepherd's muscles were tense under his touch, but he maintained his disciplined position, years of training keeping him focused despite his obvious agitation. As they waited, David thought about all the cases they'd worked together. Zeus had an uncanny ability to detect not just contraband, but the intention behind it. He seemed to understand that their work wasn't just about finding illegal goods, it was about protecting the vulnerable. When the backup team arrived, led by Senior Inspector Eric Lee, they approached with practiced caution. Eric had worked with David and Zeus long enough to respect their partnership. "What's he got?" Eric asked quietly, noting Zeus's intense focus. "Something different," David replied, describing Zeus's unusual behavior. "It's not like his normal contraband alerts. This is more personal. The process of opening such containers was always tense. Protocol required careful documentation and multiple witnesses. As the heavy doors creaked open, Zeus's agitation increased, and a peculiar, musty odor wafted out. The smell hit David's nose, making him wince. Years of experience told him this wasn't just another smuggling case. Something's not right here. Eric murmured, shining his flashlight into the dimly lit interior. The beam cut through the shadows, revealing rows of neatly stacked burlap sacks. But Zeus's behavior became even more insistent, his whines taking on a note David had never heard before, almost mournful. As the forensics team worked methodically through the container's contents, Zeus remained focused, his body tense but controlled. David noticed how his partner kept returning to certain bags, as if trying to tell them something specific. Years of working together had taught David to read Zeus's subtle signals, and right now, every line of the shepherd's body spoke of distress. "Easy, boy," David murmured in Mandarin, a language Zeus had come to understand as intimately as his German training commands. The dog briefly pressed against his leg, seeking and offering comfort simultaneously, before returning to his vigilant watch over the scene. Inspector Eric's phone buzzed continuously as higher authorities were notified. Each call seemed to bring more officials to the scene, their faces growing grimmer as the scale of the discovery became apparent. Nearly 12 tons of pangolin scales, representing thousands of slaughtered animals, made this one of the largest wildlife trafficking busts in the port's history. David watched as Zeus suddenly darted to a corner of the container, pawing at several bags that looked no different from the others. Following his partner's lead, David called over the forensics team. When they carefully opened these particular sacks, they found what would break the case wide open. Waterproof pouches containing documents hidden beneath the layers of scales. "This is extraordinary," breathed Senior Inspector Eric, carefully handling one of the documents with gloved hands. "These aren't just shipping manifests, they're entire operation details." His eyes widened as he scanned the papers. Contact lists, payment records, routes. They've accidentally given us their whole playbook. Detective Lou Sarah arrived at the scene, her presence indicating the gravity of the situation. A veteran of the Wildlife Crimes Unit with 20 years' experience, she had a reputation for turning complex cases into successful prosecutions. David had worked with her before and respected how she always took time to acknowledge Zeus's contributions. "Good work, both of you," she said, pausing to let Zeus sniff her hand in greeting before turning to the evidence. Her experienced eyes quickly assessed the documents, her expression hardening. "This is bigger than we thought, much bigger." As the team began processing the scene, David and Zeus maintained their position by the container's entrance. Zeus's alertness never wavered, even as hours passed. Occasionally, he would look up at David with those knowing eyes, as if to say, "There's more. Keep looking." The investigation quickly expanded beyond the port. Detective Lou set up a command center in a nearby office. Walls soon covered with photos and documents. Two names kept appearing in the evidence. Lee Chun-ki, a South Korean businessman whose import-export business appeared legitimate on the surface, and Hee-chin Sarah, a Chinese national with connections to traditional medicine suppliers. "Look at this," Lou said, pointing to a series of photographs found in the hidden documents. The images showed pangolins being captured in Indonesia and Malaysia, the brutal efficiency of the operation evident in every frame. David felt Zeus press against his leg as he viewed the photos, the shepherd's empathy apparent in his soft whine. "I know, boy," David whispered, kneeling beside his partner. "This is why we do what we do." Zeus's warm brown eyes met his, filled with an understanding that sometimes seemed to transcend species. They had seen many disturbing things in their years together, but something about this case felt personal to both of them. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Junior Officer John Wang, reviewing the seized photographs, recognized a warehouse in the background of one image. "Sir," he called out, excitement and disbelief mixing in his voice. "This building? It's here in Shenzhen. I pass it every day on my way to work." Detective Lou quickly gathered the team. "If we're right about this warehouse, we might have a chance to catch them in the act," she said, spreading out a map of the city. "But we'll need absolute certainty before we move." David looked down at Zeus, who sat alertly at his side. "What do you think, partner? Ready for some surveillance work?" Zeus's tail wagged once, decisively, his posture showing he was ready for whatever came next. As the team dispersed to begin planning the surveillance operation, David took Zeus outside for a brief break. In the quiet moment away from the chaos, he reflected on how far they'd come together, from their first uncertain days as partners to now, when they could communicate with just a look or a gesture. "You know," he said softly to Zeus as they watched the sun setting over the port, "sometimes I think you understand more about human nature than most people do." Zeus rested his head on David's knee, his presence a steady comfort in the face of the darkness they confronted together. The warehouse surveillance operation began immediately, with teams working in shifts to monitor all activity. David and Zeus were assigned the critical night watch, their experience with detection making them ideal for identifying suspicious movements. They worked from an unmarked van parked among other delivery vehicles, blending into the industrial landscape. During their long nights of surveillance, David would often think back to their training days together. He remembered how Zeus had excelled at patience, a rare quality in young detection dogs. That same patience now served them well as they watched hour after hour, waiting for the right moment. Movement at the southeast entrance, David whispered into his radio one particularly cold night, as Zeus's ears perked up at the sound of an approaching truck. The shepherd's training kept him silent, but David could feel his partner's mounting excitement. Through their night vision equipment, they observed workers unloading crates with practiced efficiency. "Each person has a specific role," David noted in his log. "This isn't some amateur operation." Zeus watched intently, his head tilted slightly as he tracked the movements below. Even after years of working together, David was still amazed by his partner's ability to focus. Detective Lee had coordinated with international authorities, building a comprehensive picture of the trafficking network. The warehouse they discovered was just one node in a complex web spanning several countries, but it was a crucial one, a distribution hub where buyers could inspect merchandise before making larger purchases. The breakthrough came when surveillance picked up chatter about a major meeting. Both Lee and he would be present for a shipment inspection, a rare opportunity to catch the operations masterminds together. Lee planned the raid for dawn, that crucial time when night shift workers were exhausted and day shift hadn't yet arrived. The night before the raid, David took Zeus for a longer walk than usual. "Tomorrow's going to be important, boy," he said quietly as they walked through a nearby park. "We need to be at our best." Zeus looked up at him with those understanding eyes, as if absorbing the significance of the moment. At 5:43 a.m., as the first hints of sunrise painted the sky in soft pinks and grays, the raid began. Zeus led the way for the tactical team, his keen nose having already indicated 12 people inside the warehouse. Years of training in detecting both wildlife products and human presence made him an invaluable asset for the operation. "Police! Don't move!" The shouts echoed through the warehouse as doors burst open from multiple entry points. The element of surprise worked perfectly. Most of the workers were caught completely off guard. Zeus and David were with the team that secured the main storage area, where they found row upon row of shelves filled with pangolin scales and other illegal wildlife products. The scene that unfolded was controlled chaos, but Zeus remained focused, leading David through the warehouse with purpose. Several workers attempted to flee but were quickly apprehended by the waiting perimeter teams. In a back office, Lee was caught trying to delete files from a computer, while he was discovered attempting to escape through a hidden door behind a false wall. But Zeus wasn't finished. Even as the suspects were being secured, he began indicating something beneath the floorboards in the office. His behavior was intense but precise. This wasn't just residual sent from the trafficking operation. This was something specific. When officers pried up the boards, they discovered a hidden compartment containing documents, phones, and several USB drives, crucial evidence that would help unravel the entire network. "Good boy, Zeus," David praised softly, watching as his partner continued to search methodically through the space. The most heart-wrenching discovery came when Zeus led them to a small room at the back of the warehouse. His behavior changed noticeably, becoming more gentle, more cautious. Inside, they found 3 live pangolins in a makeshift cage, clearly kept as samples for potential buyers. The animals were in terrible condition, stressed and malnourished. David watched as wildlife rescue experts gently removed the pangolins, noticing how Zeus sat quietly nearby, his eyes never leaving the animals. Over their years together, David had seen his partner display remarkable sensitivity toward rescued animals, as if he understood the importance of remaining calm and non-threatening. The weeks following the raid transformed the quiet customs team into the center of an international media storm. The scope of the evidence recovered from the warehouse led to simultaneous arrests across 6 countries, exposing corruption at multiple levels of the shipping industry. Through it all, David worked to shield Zeus from too much attention, knowing his partner preferred the quiet focus of their regular duties. However, Zeus's story caught the imagination of the public in an unexpected way. Here was a former shelter dog, once considered too contemplative for police work, who had helped uncover one of the largest wildlife trafficking operations in Asian history. The German Shepherd's journey from unwanted puppy to wildlife protection hero resonated with people around the world. The real impact of Zeus's discovery goes far beyond this single case. Detective Lee explained during a press conference, while Zeus sat calmly at David's feet, seemingly unaware of the cameras focused on him. The documents and digital evidence we recovered have given us unprecedented insight into how these trafficking networks operate. We're now better equipped to stop them before more animals suffer. The 3 rescued pangolins became symbols of hope at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. David often brought Zeus to visit them, noting how his partner seemed to understand the need for gentle, quiet movements around the traumatized animals. The youngest pangolin, nicknamed Lucky by the rescue team, showed particular resilience, and something remarkable began to develop. "I've never seen anything like it, Doctor." Eric, the lead wildlife veterinarian, remarked one day, "Usually pangolins are extremely shy around dogs, but Lucky actually seems to recognize Zeus. Watch this." As they observed, Lucky approached the front of his enclosure whenever Zeus appeared, showing none of the fear typically associated with his species. David would sit for hours with Zeus, watching the pangolin's recovery progress. "See how far they've come?" he would say, scratching behind Zeus's ears. The shepherd would sit quietly, head tilted, seeming to understand the importance of their recovery. The Wildlife Center staff were amazed at how the pangolins appeared to recognize Zeus. Showing no fear of the dog who had helped save them, the trial of Lee and he became a landmark case in wildlife crime prosecution. David and Zeus attended every day, their presence a steady reminder of how the case began. The evidence was overwhelming. Detailed ledgers, digital records, and surveillance footage painted a picture of a sophisticated criminal enterprise that had operated with impunity for years. During the proceedings, Zeus's role became a central focus. Defense lawyers tried to dismiss the initial discovery as luck, but expert testimony about the sophisticated training and capabilities of detection dogs helped establish the legitimacy of the evidence. The judge in particular seemed impressed by the detailed documentation of Zeus's training and his proven track record. The sentencing hearing was emotional. Victim impact statements came not just from conservation organizations, but from communities in Africa and Southeast Asia, where pangolin populations had been decimated. David watched as Zeus listened to each speaker, his ears moving to track their voices, seeming to understand the gravity of the moment. The judge's sentence was unprecedented. 15 years in prison for each kingpin and massive fines earmarked specifically for wildlife conservation efforts. This case, the judge noted in her remarks, reminds us that sometimes the smallest and most vulnerable among us find protection from unexpected guardians. The case's impact rippled through the international community. Shipping companies, stung by the revelations of corruption, implemented stricter verification procedures. Several ports adopted what became known as the Zeus Protocol, a comprehensive system of checks and balances designed to catch wildlife smuggling attempts. The warehouse itself underwent a transformation. Rather than let it stand as a reminder of cruelty, authorities converted it into a wildlife crime education center. A special exhibit dedicated to Zeus and other working animals in law enforcement became its centerpiece. A life-size statue of the German Shepherd stands at the entrance, capturing his characteristic alert but gentle expression. David noticed changes in Zeus too. While the shepherd maintained his quiet efficiency during their port duties, he seemed to have gained an even deeper sense of purpose. His attention to wildlife shipments became even more focused, as if he understood that each container they checked could mean the difference between life and death for endangered animals. 1 year after the raid, David found himself addressing a new class of wildlife detection dog handlers, with Zeus sitting attentively by his side. The most important lesson we learned, he told them, wasn't about search techniques or evidence handling. It was about trust. Trust in your partner's instincts, trust in their heart, and trust in the bond you share. 2 years after the historic raid, David stood at the podium of the newly established International Wildlife Protection Training Center, Zeus faithfully by his side. Though gray now touched his partner's muzzle, Zeus's eyes remained as bright and focused as ever. Below them, 20 handler and dog teams from across Asia listened intently, each hoping to learn from the partnership that had changed wildlife protection forever. People often ask me what made Zeus different. David addressed the audience, his hand resting gently on Zeus's back. The truth is, it wasn't just his exceptional nose or his training, it was his heart. Every detection dog has the ability to find contraband, but Zeus understood why we were looking. The success of their case had revolutionized wildlife protection training. The methods developed during their pangolin case had become standard protocol, but more importantly, the selection criteria for detection dogs had changed. Training centers now looked for dogs like Zeus, the thoughtful ones, the watchers, the ones who might have been overlooked before. Lucky, the rehabilitated pangolin had become an ambassador for his species. Under the care of dedicated wildlife experts, he had transformed from a terrified trafficking victim into a confident animal who helped educate the public about wildlife conservation. Scientists studying the rescued pangolins made remarkable discoveries about their intelligence and social behavior, information that proved invaluable for conservation efforts. David and Zeus regularly visited the rehabilitation center, where their presence had become a source of comfort, not just for the animals, but for the staff as well. It's like he knows exactly how to behave with each animal. One of the caretakers observed, watching Zeus gentle his movements around a newly rescued pangolin. He's teaching us as much as we're teaching others. The impact of their case continued to ripple outward. Shipping companies, stung by the revelations of corruption, implemented stricter verification procedures. Several ports adopted what became known as the Zeus Protocol, a comprehensive system of checks and balances designed to catch wildlife smuggling attempts. The protocol wasn't just about increased security. It included training staff to recognize signs of trafficking and establishing clear channels for reporting suspicious activities. Perhaps the most touching legacy came in the form of letters and drawings sent to Zeus from children around the world. The story of a loyal dog helping to save endangered animals had captured imaginations and inspired a new generation of wildlife defenders. James Chun kept a bulletin board covered with this artwork in their office, and he noticed how Zeus would often sit and study the pictures, as if understanding his role in inspiring others. As Zeus approached retirement age, James Chun noticed his partner slowing down, but never losing his dedication. They spent more time training younger dogs, with Zeus seemingly taking pride in demonstrating proper search techniques to his successors. Even more remarkable was how the veteran shepherds seemed to identify which dogs had special potential, often paying particular attention to the quieter, more thoughtful ones. "He's choosing his successors," Detective Lee remarked one day, watching Zeus work with a young Belgian Malinois who had initially been considered too reserved for the program. He sees himself in them. The final tally of their case's impact was impressive. Over 50 arrests across 3 continents, the disruption of multiple trafficking routes, and a significant decrease in pangolin smuggling through Asian ports. But for James Chun, the real measure of success could be seen in the thriving pangolins at the rehabilitation center, and in Zeus's continued dedication to their work. On Zeus's last official day of duty, the port authorities organized a special ceremony. Representatives from wildlife organizations worldwide came to honor the dog who had helped change the face of wildlife crime prevention. Zeus accepted the attention with his usual quiet dignity, though his tail wagged especially hard when presented with a large bone. James Chun's speech that day moved many to tears. "Some say animals don't understand the impact of their work," he said, his hand resting on Zeus's head. "But I've watched this dog comfort trafficking victims, guide younger dogs, and show us all what dedication truly means." Zeus didn't just find evidence. He found a way to show us our own humanity. Today, visitors to the Wildlife Protection Training Center are greeted by 2 statues, one of a proud German shepherd in his prime, and beside it, a smaller statue of a pangolin looking up at the dog who helped save its species. The plaque below reads, "To Zeus, who reminded us that heroes come in all species and that the smallest among us deserve the greatest protection. James Chun retired from active duty the same day as Zeus, but they didn't stop their work entirely. They became special advisors to the training center, where Zeus's legacy continues to inspire new generations of wildlife detection teams. Even in retirement, Zeus maintained his gentle dignity and sense of purpose, showing that the heart of a protector never truly retires. There's so much we can learn from this story, from Zeus's patience to the dedication of his handler, David. This isn't just a story of victory in one case, but a living testament to the importance of protecting wildlife and their natural habitats. If you were moved by this story and want to see more like it, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss out on more captivating and inspiring videos. Thank you for watching, and let's continue spreading the message of wildlife protection to the world. Subscribe today to stay up to date with our latest videos.